Hello and welcome to the e-commerce Fuel podcast, the show dedicated to helping 7- and 8-figure e-commerce brand owners build incredible businesses and amazing lives. And it is 6:30 Arizona time. It is 8:30 Chiang Mai time, and doing a late night, early morning edition. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Joining me today is Matt Diggity. He is the owner and founder of a lot of different things. A big thank you to Katrina McKinnon for the intro. Thank you, Katrina. But Matt, he's really SEO. He knows exceptionally well. Affiliate marketing, he knows exceptionally well. He runs the Chiang Mai SEO conference, Diggity Marketing, Affiliate Lab Search Initiative, and an amazing SEO channel on YouTube, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But yeah, Matt, we're going to cover a ton of ground here and have enjoyed your videos. You know a tremendous amount about YouTube marketing, about SEO, about affiliate, and we're going to cover all the news and some predictions you've got for the coming year, because it's a lot going on this year with SEO, AI, and everything. But yeah, thank you for being here. Really looking forward to this.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, shout out to Katrina for the introduction. That's a good one.
Yeah, very much appreciated. We got to start completely on the polar opposite of SEO and affiliate and all that kind of stuff. I told you earlier, and this wasn't disingenuous, I mean it. You're 44. You're probably the best looking 44-year-old guy I've ever seen in terms of just like aging amazingly like a fine wine. And then I asked you, what are you excited about? And you mentioned a couple things, and one of them was biohacking. And so whenever you're working, you're like a walking case study in this. What are you doing, man? Like, what's the secret? I want to give us the secret of youth here, because it's working for you.
Man, well, I mean, half of it is just being half Asian and having those genes. Thank you, Mom. But no, for real. It's like I take fitness seriously. I drink a lot of water every day. I wear sunblock every day. Those kind of things. Supplements, resveratrol and NMN, which are supposedly the most well-researched health span supplements and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's fun. Just like any other thing you do in business, which is optimization. Why not also optimize yourself? And that's your body and your mind too.
Yeah. And I'm probably going to pronounce or butcher the pronunciation on it, but NMN and resveratrol. I think I said that maybe close to right.
Resveratrol.
I've heard of.
Yeah.
Thank you. Matt's like, no, you totally butchered it. I've heard of those like kind of in fringe circles, or not even that fringe. I've heard of some about. Can you give, for people that have never heard of them and myself who've only like just very remotely aware of them, what are they and what are their benefits?
Okay, so resveratrol is found in red wine. And, people say, a glass of red wine a day is good for your health and all that kind of stuff. And I guess the philosophy behind that is organisms that are stressed. So wine is stressed when it's created. It's usually grown in the cold, and the grape is like barely hanging on to survive. And so that releases, resveratrol in these grapes. NMN, I'm not exactly sure how it works. As far as I know, it's like an NAD precursor, and it's like oxygen for the cells, energy for the cells, something like that. So that's the stack that David Sinclair, the author of Lifespan, prefers for himself. So I'm just like, okay, copy that guy.
Yeah, I got about a third of the way through that book, and it's still on my shelf. And it was it is some some heavy sledding in there. So I need to go back in and do a second take there. Last question on the health front, and then we're going to get into what happens with Google, what's happened recently with Google, because there's a ton that's been going on. You mentioned fitness. What's at a very high level, kind of what your fitness routine look like on a weekly basis?
Mostly resistance training, and not like at 44. The goal is not to get bigger. It's just to not be injured. So, tight reps, lots of reps and tight squeeze, mind muscle connection, that kind of stuff. And then decent chunk of zone 2 cardio, like 3 hours of zone 2 cardio per week. And that's pretty much it.
Got it. Very cool. Well done, man. You definitely have some, especially on the biohacking side, some things we're stealing. I'm gonna try to dive back into Sinclair's book here after the inspiration. Let's talk Google. Let's talk SEO and affiliate. What just happened? So I wasn't aware of it, but I think it took the affiliate world just completely kind of set off an atom bomb for a lot of affiliates. What just happened with Google's helpful content update?
Right. Yeah. So that dropped in September. It's not the first helpful content update. They've probably released like 3 or 4 of them. But the helpful content update is centered around looking at your website, finding which of these articles on your website are considered unhelpful content. They define that as like content that would require someone to search again and try to find what they were looking for, too much fluff, or there's a lot of different definitions of it. But the interesting thing about this update is if you have bad content on your site, Google will weigh that against the good content on your site too. So let's say 20% of your site is bad. It's not just like this content won't rank, it'll impede the rest of your good content from ranking too. So that's what it's supposed to do. And in September, at the Helpful Content Update, they redefined their classifier. What that means is like they've adjusted what they're using to define helpful content. But the weird thing about this one is that with this update, a certain class of websites seem to get beat up more than any of else. And I didn't just find this within my own portfolio, like the industry is reporting this as well, which that class would be called content sites. A site that's made by building content with the goal of either selling things through affiliate links or monetize through display ads through Google Display Network or via Mediavine or something like that. So there was an unproportional amount of carnage within that space, my portfolio included. So what replaced it? The weird thing is that what replaced it was a lot of like user-generated content like Reddit and Quora, and a lot of parasite SEO remains. So like parasite SEO is when SEO professionals are paying places like Dallas News, like SF Gate, these old prehistoric newspapers that used to be print newspapers. They're now selling posts, but because they have so much large authority, people are using them and paying them. Put my article up here, I'll get to number one on Google, and I'll pay you a lot of money to do that. Those still are remaining up there. So what this kind of makes me feel like is, okay, if a subject matter expert on, I don't know, kayaking isn't allowed to rank anymore because Google doesn't like the model, and they're putting Reddit up there instead and parasite SEO, it seems like that Google's actually attacking the model itself. The results are getting worse. And if they're okay with doing that, it just means they really have it out for that model. So, like within my portfolio, all my SaaS websites, my lead generation websites, my real estate website, all that kind of stuff, that's perfectly fine. It's just I had some carnage over in this content website area, which has got a lot of people shooken up right now.
Yeah. And so this is not necessarily content attached to an e-commerce site. Google is able to distinguish and say, hey, this is just a blog and an affiliate site or a content site maybe driving. What is it? And obviously you're just making guesses, but if you had to guess the 1 or 2, 3 factors that really label, hey, this is a content site that's getting axed, what are those markers?
That's exactly. Okay, so that's exactly the way you should look at it. Google doesn't like this. Well, how are they identifying this? And can I not look like that and still be this, but can I do other things to cover it up? So we saw this kind of attack on content sites before in the December 2020 core algorithm update. And that's the exact question we had. So like, what is a threshold between a site doing whatever versus a site being classified as a content website? And we ran a correlation study with thousands and thousands of websites, and we found it's a ratio. How much affiliate monetized content do you have versus non-affiliate monetized content? And it seemed to be like the perfect graph. Like the more monetized affiliate content you had on your site, the more traffic you lost in that update. And so there seems to be like a specific ratio where Google's saying, okay, this is fine, but any more than this is too much and we don't like it. And so that was fine. And we made our adjustments. The portfolio is thriving and stuff like that. So we're in the similar situation. We just need to figure out what it is at this point in time. But it's just a little bit more complicated because I think it's not one factor that they're looking at. It's probably many. I've looked at hundreds of websites so far, and we're looking at stuff like, does a site have realistic looking authors? Does it have monetization diversity? Is it just affiliate and display ads, or does it have an e-commerce store on there? Does it have a coaching landing page? Another thing is like, does it have too much display ads? Does it have too little? Does it have email marketing on it and stuff like that? And every time I start to see a pattern, there's one example that just disproves the whole thing. Well, this one is completely going against all that theory, so, which makes me think that there's multiple things going on. So like if a site has these three things going against for it, but these three things going against it, could go either way, that kind of thing. But there's one ranking factor that seems to be prevalent amongst winners and absent from losers in this recent helpful content update, and that's brand search volume. How many people are Googling Diggity Marketing, Matt Diggity? And if that's a significant amount, I've seen even cases where there's the worst websites, but they have a decent chunk of brand search volume and they were saved in that last update. So that's the name of the game right now. It's experimentation. Like, how do we, if this is the thing, how do we generate brand search? And do we do this in a white hat manner? Do we just manufacture it through black hat means? And this is, for me, this is a time or opportunity, because right now, this is when people give up at SEO, but the people that stick around, that figure out this new way to satisfy the algorithm, this is when you can clean up and sweep up a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, you were, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually look at e-commerce stores as fairly well positioned given this update. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can look at search terms like best wireless router. Well, here's two examples of where e-commerce is doing good. First off, it just wasn't touched that much. I can't even recall like any case studies that have come across my way that were hit during helpful content update in the e-commerce space. And then secondly, we have Google SGE coming up. Google's adding AI to their search results, and typical affiliate keywords like best wireless router, that would usually go to a content website reviewing routers. So now they're giving an AI answer to it, like here's our favorite wireless routers, and they're giving links straight to e-commerce stores. So it's like they're bypassing the content website in these cases. So I think e-commerce is a great place to be right now.
Let's talk a little bit about SGE, Search Generative Experience. And it's funny, when I was researching for this, you've got a fantastic video that just dropped. We'll link up to it in the show notes about predictions for 2024. And a lot of the little threads we're going to tug on here came out of that. But talk a little bit about SGE, because most people didn't know. Again, I didn't know. I had to go dive into this. Yeah, I think it's in labs right now. You actually have to manually go in and update it. But similar to stuff Bing is doing, but really it's just an AI results at the top of your search results page for Google. Is that right? Is that the best way to think about it?
Yeah.
So what are implications for the SEO industry? One little nugget before we dive into that. I mean, I think like a lot of people, the whole thought process is, man, well, if AI, ChatGPT, and if Google in that box starts summarizing everything, they don't drive any traffic back to other pages, and so it disincentivizes people to create content, which is definitely a valid view. Although I think you have some really interesting, nuanced kind of counter takes on that. But I have been noticing, like for people signing up for our forum, we've actually been noticing not a huge surge, but a noticeable increase in the number of people who have found us through AI or through like ChatGPT, which has really surprised me. So, which has been kind of a nice silver lining I wasn't expecting. But getting back to the original question, I kind of just danced around. What are your implications for the SEO industry in terms of AI in general, SGE from Google, and why is it maybe not as much of a, just the world is ending for content sites and for e-commerce sites as some might guess?
Right. So SEOs are pissed off, right? Because Google is going to start answering the questions that websites used to answer. And if they're getting their answer at the top of the search result, then there's no need to click the website and find it, which is better for user experience. Like probably the AI. Like if I Google something as trivial as how many calories are in an apple, like do I really want to dig through websites to find it, or do I just want the answer at the top, like the featured snippet? So the reason that people are so pissed is like, okay, how are you learning that information? Well, you're reading it from my website, and then you're basically stealing and rewriting my content. So we're not getting any credit for that, and our traffic is getting lowered. So that's why content producers are pissed off about it. But that said, I don't think that it's going to be that impactful as people think. Number one, it's slow, right? So when you apply to labs and get it enabled, you'll see it takes about 6 to 8 seconds to generate an AI answer. And so like that's slow, like in the realm of the internet. That's too slow. People want faster answers. And a lot of time people just don't want an answer from an AI. Like if I'm shopping for condos, I'm not going to listen to the AI say buy this one. I want to talk to a real estate agent, right? In the e-commerce field, like I'm not gonna just like Google router and then just buy whatever one it says. I want to read reviews. I want to look at the manufacturer site. I want to see the terms and conditions, stuff like that. So it also makes mistakes. So the AI has hallucinations, and I think there was an example of it saying like the price of a pretty well-known candy bar, Hershey's or something like that, was like $350. Like, okay, it's not. So Google's like a little bit worried about pissing off their users, so they're not going to push out something that's going to make mistakes. And then you also talked about the part about if they're discouraging content creators from writing content, and the AI learns from that content, isn't this a spiral towards terrible AI? Because the AI won't be able to learn anything new because people aren't writing anything new. But the real reason that I don't think it's going to be as impactful as people think is because of money, right? If you're generating an AI answer at the top of the search result, all the search ads are pushed down, which means they're less valuable to the people buying them, which means people will pay less for them. If you're not sending traffic to websites, then Google Display Network, which is eight figures a year in revenue, goes away. No, not eight. It's tens of billions per year, whatever that number is. Tens of billions per year will go away, right? So at the end of the day, I think like they don't know how to monetize it, and that's the thing that's really going to hold them back from fully unleashing it until it's monetized successfully. But I don't see how they're going to figure that out anytime soon.
Yeah, ballpark. I think from your video, you said something like display ads roughly was, I don't know, maybe 20 billion in revenue versus like maybe 20 or 30 billion versus like the 150 for pay per click and kind of like your SERP style stuff. So, I mean, if you're looking at roughly 20-ish ballpark percent, that's shocked me. I'm surprised that display was that. It's not, I mean, still minority, but that's a big chunk. 20% is pretty meaningful.
Oh yeah.
We just did something at eCommerce Fuel where we spent 4 or 5 months trying to build out an AI bot for the community, because we've got 10 years of posts. It takes a lot of time to go through and sort through them, and we spent a meaningful amount into the 5 figures trying to build out this bot with a team, and got to the point where we're getting close to launching it, and the results just were not that good. And granted, we're not OpenAI, right? Like they've got way more brain power and firepower and everything than us. But we were using some of their technology. We were doing some things to also anonymize it to keep the identities and some of the sensitive details safer as a precaution. But bottom line is we couldn't get it to a point with a meaningful investment where we felt comfortable releasing it because the quality wasn't that good. So, which I thought was kind of interesting. And so we tabled it. We may come back to that in the future, but yeah, it was surprising to me that how hard it was to get, even with a lot of technical work put into it, to get it where even within even to a 7 or 8 out of 10, we couldn't get there. So
yeah, I tried it too. I tried to train it on all my YouTube content and my course content. And tell me if this happened to you. Sometimes, let's say there's the user asks your AI bot an e-commerce question. There's certain insider knowledge that you would answer that question with, but sometimes the AI just give you a generic answer that it learned off the internet.
Yes, tons of times, and it was tough because it would supplement with the ChatGPT general knowledge, but then it would pull in some things from the community. Yes, and it would do. Yeah, the level of nuance was very high level, and that was the thing. Like you'd write like, "Hey, tell me, how do I improve email marketing deliverability?" And all the real niche stuff. The finesse was not there. It wasn't nuanced enough.
Yeah, and then what's the stickiness in it? Like people will play around with that for a week, and then just be like, this isn't what I thought.
Yeah, it's got to be really good. I still think one of the best thing with AI and ChatGPT is just the repurposing of data, like the repurposing of like looking for trends, digging through a lot of data, being able to rewrite things in a voice. That's really helpful. But for like, I think it's a harder answer for like really deep insights on especially if you don't have a massive data set for it. So yeah. Well, what do you think about the future of content for SEO and AI? I mean, you've got Google. You had mentioned, this is interesting in your video, that like Google's not opposed to AI generated content. They actually kind of tweaked their terms of service to leave the door open for actually being able to use AI. But I think you make the case, or of the opinion that like more AI, if you actually have 300 articles on a topic versus 30, even if they're not as good, that's going to help you with with the search, kind of with just getting traffic. Is that, am I saying that right?
Yeah. Well, let's start from the beginning. So they changed their documentation, helpful content documentation. Once again, it used to say, we will reward high quality content written by people for people. And then they changed it to created for people. So that's clearly legalizing AI, right? And that if you scan on Twitter, search liaisons and stuff like that, we'll also say there's no problem with AI content. You just need to add something new to it, or make sure it answers a search query and whatever. And their hand was forced. They can't say you can't use AI, but we can. So their hand was forced. Now, if they're giving us a 20% haircut in traffic, and again, this is just my estimation, but they've given us the green light to use AI to produce content, I'll take that deal any day of the week. Like, SEO is simply content and links. You just trivialized one of the hardest parts of SEO. Now I can press buttons and get good content and produce it in mass, which goes in great with what you were alluding to earlier. It's called topical authority. So topical authority, this is best illustrated with an example. So let's say like ecommercefuel.com. Let's say you decided to publish the best article on surfing ever written. It's the beginner's guide to surfing. Kelly Slater wrote the whole thing. It's perfect. You could read that and you can surf in 5 minutes. It will never rank anywhere on Google. It will never have a chance because they think that you wrote one article on surfing. It doesn't mean you're a subject matter expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if even on your site that has nothing to do with surfing, once you start adding 100, 200, 300 and really covering the topic of surfing, then they say, oh, this guy's a subject matter expert. We have to listen to him now. But that single article by itself is useless. So once you start covering the niche, then it's all cost problems. Like if every time someone types beginner guide to surfing and they're looking at all billion websites of the internet, it's too expensive, right? But if they can predetermine, here's 400 sites that are really good at surfing, then I'll always reference these guys. So that it's all about cost with these guys. And yeah, like another example of that is the question. If you Google how many calories are in an apple, the example from before, the best article would just simply be an article that said 35 or whatever the answer is. I'm not sure. 35. But if you look right now, it's a 2,000 word article. So why does it have to be like that? Because Google doesn't know the answer to any questions. Google only knows if what you wrote is comparable to the top articles already on Google. And they're already, all the other articles are 2,000 words. So you have to blend in with the same. So the name of the game right now is we know how Google works. It doesn't really reward when you're doing something new. It doesn't reward when you're going above and beyond everyone else. It just looks and see how well you fit in with everyone else. And then they love topical authority. They love when you're answering a lot of questions, so they can count on you for answering questions in that niche. And when you add AI into this and you can print websites and topical clusters out, this is when like this whole AI thing turns from a scare into huge opportunity.
So I can see that if you're sitting on a website with a lot of authority, and you can crank that out with AI, I can see in like the short term that being a big boon for the site owners. In the medium to long term, it seems like an absolute disaster for anyone reading content online, right? Like because if Google is just ranking things that look like the things that are out there, if everyone's incentivized to pump out boatloads of content, and the more content you like, more content that's shorter is going to win over longer content that's better. It just seems like a race to the bottom, and before long, we're just the entire internet is flooded with a really garbage, kind of low quality. And like we are talking about before, it's really hard to get AI to understand the real finesse and the nuance of a topic. So I mean, do you see that panning out? Like I feel like one thing I have that's become more of a priority for me over the last year with the advent of AI is investing in personal branding. So doing more videos, trying to connect with more, like being more intentional about not just, I used to think personal branding was a liability, right? And I think there's a stream of thought for a while, like, oh, hey, like if your name is too attached to your business, like that's a huge liability. You can't sell it. It's hard to transfer, which is true. But I think there's also going forward going to be a lot of value in having a personal brand. I mean, to go back to the example of you looking like the fountain of youth at 44, If I'm reading and looking at websites about biohacking, and I get an AI answer versus you who are 44, look fantastic in great health, are walking through your nutrition regimen, like I'll take you every day. Your opinion, partially because of it's proven, partially because humans connect with humans. So
Yeah.
anyway, I threw a lot out there, but do you think we're just in store for just a flood of just crappy content? And because that's what it seems like, given what I'm hearing.
Well, here's the spoiler alert. Google's been acting like this in their algorithm for years and years now. I'd say at least 6 years or so. The results started being homogenous, right? Like if you Google best restaurants in Tokyo, you're going to find page 1 through 50. Every single article is a listicle. They're all listicles. We want the same thing over and over. Listicle. There's nothing unique there. There's nothing that rewards anything good. And I think the reason for that is like there's this theory about information gain that Google will reward you if you add additional information and personal experience, interesting data that doesn't exist in the other articles. And that theory is nice. We'd love for it to work that way. But how, if just because you wrote something new, how does Google know that's correct or not? Especially if no one else wrote it. Now it's just become a computation liability and accurate information liability to figure out what you wrote is true. So I don't see information gain actually working in practice. Now, will AI make this whole situation worse? You bet your ass. Like Google already works in a way that they reward the same thing over and over again. So like now we can just produce more of the same faster.
Do you own any Google stock? And if you didn't, like if you had to make a speculation, obviously we're just for fun, not a financial advice. But like, do you own Google stock? Would you make a long or short bet on it based on what you see?
I don't know any individual stocks, but if I did, I'd probably put money in them. Like they seem like a juggernaut. But with all this like class action stuff right now, that's a different story. Maybe they get broken up and regulated a little bit.
I again, talking to you today and looking at your past stuff, one thing that came to mind for me was thinking that Google isn't quite as sophisticated as I originally thought. I mean, you just talked about it now. Like they have the ability, they look for trends. I thought for a long time, like Google was pretty good at being able to suss out what content was great, just objectively, right? Or I guess subjectively, it have to be subjectively, but in terms of what humans would think. But it's interesting hearing you talk about it. You paint much more of a picture of the reason that Google goes to links is because it's it's probably the most efficient way to do it on a cost basis. Like you had some quote too, where you said every Google search I think is 0.3 of a cent, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then you start thinking how many searches go on per day. And obviously it's a profitable business model, but there's much more computational power behind just a single search not even imagined. And so like the incentives to think like, not just how do we do this, but how do we do this cost effectively? That never even crossed my mind that was something Google had to worry about.
Yeah. I'm glad you caught on to that. The first time I had it in the back of my head, and then I want to say a year and a half ago, there was a Yandex leak. Yandex is Russia's Google, right? And there's a leak on their ranking factors, and so many of them where I thought there's like this big complex way that they're reading content or interpreting like the value of something. They're like if statements. If website has this, plus 1 point. If not, minus 1 point. It was like, oh, this is all about cost savings. Like this is about making things simple and just being able to reorder these results in a way that doesn't cost billions of dollars. And so like one of Google's main things that they try to push you to do is to have EAT in your content: experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. And so if you look at their quality rater guidelines, that's all about, are your authors credible? Do they have authority in the space? Have they written a lot about it? Do they have the credentials and stuff like that, like PhD, whatever? And so a lot of SEOs panic and be like, oh shit, I got to go find doctors to write anything that has to do with health now. But in actuality, going back to what you were saying before, it's all about links. Google's been on record saying EAT is mostly influenced by links. And they even give an example of a link that would give you EAT, a link from the Washington Post. So it's like, I'm sure they would love to be able to track down your author and make sure he went to Berkeley and got a 4.0 GPA and all that kind of stuff. They will not. they will just look at your links for the most part. There's some other factors with the stuff too, but always got to think about how does a business do this efficiently?
Yeah, it didn't even cross my mind, but crazy. What is when you think about trying to rank a website right now? Somebody comes to you. What's your process for kind of what's your game plan at a high level for driving traffic in 2024? And we don't have to get crazy into the weeds, but I'm sure link building is a big part of the strategy. And it was interesting you mentioned, kind of I thought, well, let's go here first. Actually, you had a kind of a breakdown of how you build backlinks and where you focus on them. And like the biggest one I thought was really interesting was guest posting. It was like 40% of all your link building efforts go to guest posting. 30% go to link insertion, which maybe you can talk a little about what that means and how you do that. 10% digital PR, 12% link exchanges. But yeah, the fact that guest posting and link insertion made up 70% of your backlinks, that was interesting. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. So those are both outreach techniques. I'm going to send an email to someone and I'm going to pitch them something different. A guest post is different than a link insertion. Guest post is, I want to write content on your site. You're going to let me do that. And as part of this deal, I'm going to be able to sneak a link in there to go to my website. Like this, just like this old understanding in this SEO business. Link insertion is, hey man, you have this article on your website. Can you edit it to give me a link here? And then you're incentivizing them with money or whatever that might be. Usually money is what gets them to move. The reason those make up 70% of the pie is just because they're so, these would account for like the volume links. Like you can get these in mass and at a decent price. So like you want a big chunk of these to give what's called page rank. This is like Google's old algorithm. If you get links from websites with links, then that's good for your rankings. There's another bucket that you want to cover, which is like trust links. And those are going to build the T, trust, and EAT, right? And that's using methods like Haro, help a reporter out, digital PR, and stuff like that. And just getting links from sites that don't really have any relevance to your website, Washington Post, Forbes, links like that. American Express probably has nothing to do with your website, but you want them for the trust.
Yeah, it was fascinating because I mean, I cut my teeth originally in e-commerce with SEO. Kind of went on a little bit of a big dry spell. Came back a little bit to it recently, but it was fascinating and also kind of reassuring a little bit to see like guest posting and link insertion were still, this field exponentially better than I do, and still that those are kind of like just foundational elements of outreach made me feel a little less outdated on my SEO skills, and interesting to see.
Got it.
Man, I just it's how do you have any? And everyone listening gets so pitched so much on links like, hey, link exchange, can I guest post? Like, and I'm ruthless, and I imagine most people are too. Like, within about half a second, it's gone, it's deleted, it's archived. How do you actually get through to people in today's age when people are just kamikazes with, not that's the wrong word, but they delete anything that even smells a little bit like one of a guest post exchange, a link exchange request from somebody they don't know?
Here's an outside the box way to do it. So like, do you guys do outreach yourselves?
We don't. We haven't been doing link building for years. So we have in the past, but not recently.
Okay, so you're a real business. You're a good business, and your site's awesome. And at one point, you've been reaching out to people to ask for links. Not recently, but in the past. So there are people that exist on the internet that you want a link from, and that want links from you. So the name of the game is looking in your inbox and seeing, okay, which are the real businesses that are doing this, and let's start that relationship by doing a link exchange, and then let's start a partnership. I'm doing outreach, you're doing outreach. If I get a link on this one, I'll sneak in a link to your article. You do the same for me. Let's build a network. Let me get a couple of these guys. Let me get 4 of these guys. So now we have like all the quality link builders, and none of us are getting great results that we did like in the days before, but we're compounding our efforts together because we're all like scratching each other's backs.
I love that. Is Google looking at that though and seeing that web and I mean, because just by definition that works because you have economies of scale and you're able to, there's a lot of double, links. There's 10 articles now that link to, diggitymarketing.com and eCommerce Fuel because we've partnered up on things. It is that not something that Google is going to recognize and discount in today's world?
So you want to do it in moderation. That's why like link exchanges isn't like a huge part of my pie. But at the end of the day, I think you can get away with a lot more than you suspect. I mean, probably the same websites in your space that link to eCommerce Fuel and like whoever, like whatever the big websites are in your space, you got the same links from everybody. Just like for me, like the Diggity Mark, people who link to Diggity Marketing, they're also linking to Search Engine Journal, to Ahrefs, to Neil Patel, to everyone. So it's like the websites at the top always get the same links anyways.
Got it. That totally makes sense. Would love to hear you talk a little bit about YouTube. Again, your YouTube videos are fantastic. They run about, 10-ish minutes, packed. They're well edited, but more than anything, just really interesting content, and they move along quickly. Really nicely done. Talk a little bit about how impactful they've been for your business, because you said some things in kind of the pre-interview before we hit record that made me think, yeah, this has been a really phenomenally successful channel for you.
Yeah. So I cut my teeth with, I don't know, content marketing via blogging, right? And so I had diggitymarketing.com, and the approach I would take there is I do a lot of single variable testing, just testing one thing and creating a control group, an experimental group, applying a new stimulus to the experimental group and seeing, is that a ranking factor in Google? And I published my studies, and then that got me a lot of traction. That's what built my personal brand, is starting there. But then over time, I think it was the top of 2020, January 2020, I started to notice like traffic to websites and engagement on websites is just not what it used to be anymore. And I think the reason is just people aren't reading as much. People are watching their content or listening to their content like podcasts. So I just made a goal in January 2020 that I'm going to make one YouTube video a week and give it a run and see how it does. And so here's an example of how much more powerful video is than textual content these days. So my agency, the Search Initiative, we release case studies. So I'll detail out everything we did for a client, walk you through every single step so you can repeat it for yourself. And it's made for me to generate leads for my agency. There's a form at the bottom. If you want us to do this for you, contact us here, kind of thing. I'll publish this on the blog. And first off, Google's not going to get it to anybody because it's not keyword optimized. There's no SEO keywords. Google won't show it to anybody. The only reason I get eyeballs on it is because I have an email list. So I might get 10,000 people to read it with a 1 to 2% conversion rate. Then I'll take that same case study, make a video version of it, put it on the YouTube channel. YouTube pushes that out to people. Instead of 10,000 people, now it's 20,000 people. And the conversion rate's about 3 to 4%. So it's just a whole different ballgame. They're doing the promotion for you. The conversion rate's higher because it's a connection via video, and you can show more of your personality. People can trust your face more. So it really is a complete game changer. It's just obviously a lot harder, right?
Yeah.
You can't, it has to be my face on there, and I have to do the scripting myself too.
Yeah. What would be your tips for YouTube for people starting out? Or maybe even if they have a channel they haven't optimized very well. Like obviously thumbnail is huge. Title is huge. Those are going to be no-brainers. Having good chapter markers, I'm imagining, at the bottom and potentially a good description at the bottom. Apart from kind of the real basic things, anything else that you'd recommend that's really important for getting traction with a YouTube channel?
Yeah. So here's one thing I learned throughout the years that it would have saved me a lot of time if I just knew this from the beginning. So like you said, title and thumb are huge, and there's a certain way to do it. Like one of my one of my top videos is like how Chat GPT has already changed the SEO industry forever. Right? There's less interesting ways to do that. Will Chat GPT change SEO? No, I'm not going that route. I'm going to say it's already changed everything forever. Right? Find out why. And so now that you got people's attention through the thumbnail and the title, I thought the way to keep people on the video, retention is how it works in YouTube. You want people to watch the video for longer. And you want less people to drop off earlier. I thought the best way to do it is to save your golden nuggets to the end and just constantly tease them. Hey, it's coming. Don't worry, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. But I recently learned that you want to pay off the hook immediately. So whatever I promised you about learning about ChatGPT, I'm going to tell you exactly why right away, and then I'm going to introduce a new hook. Oh, but there's this one thing you need to know about that's going to make everything more expensive if you don't know about this. And then I solve that hook, and then I lay another one in here. But people are already resolved this by doing da 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 da. Newspapers have done this, blah blah blah. New hook, and keep going. So it's not like you string them along for as long as possible, because they'll give up. They'll just be like, oh, this isn't going anywhere. But you're just constantly introducing new hooks and resolving them as you go along.
So usually try to think of our amazing listeners here. I'm asking questions. I'm going to veer off and ask a wildly, completely selfish question here. For people who are doing content, like say this interview, for example, is it a bad move? Obviously, if you create YouTube content from scratch, you can dial it in exactly like you mentioned, like the hook process, the really optimized for YouTube. To take a video like this, if we put this on YouTube, cleaned it up maybe a little bit, but for the most part, left it in its entire kind of full media format. Is that a bad thing to do for the channel because people won't engage with it as much on average, and it will drive down the engagement, which will hurt the channel? Or I guess my question is, can you hurt yourself by putting non-optimized video on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it seems like you can. It seems like you can. Like you kind of want to keep the same type of content every single time, because YouTube builds an audience for you. So like it's not your subscribers. It's this set of people that typically watch your video. And so when you push out a new video, Google will see how is your audience, your normal people interact with that. And if they're watching it for longer, liking it more, all this kind of stuff, then they push it outside your circle. But when you're so if you're splitting your audience, I have people that come to me for my interviews, and I have people that come to me for my talking head entertaining videos. Then it's like sometimes you'll hit some of them and sometimes you won't. And then I don't think you'll be able to get those winners where it's just really starts serving it outwards, because you don't have a unanimous group that likes different that content, because they're already split. That makes sense.
Oh, totally makes sense. So you really tend to, do you publish both then? Do you publish your interviews and your very optimized talking head videos both to the same YouTube channel?
I do. And my interviews don't do nearly as well.
Interesting. Last question on YouTube. What's your process for, because I asked you earlier and you said you spend about 4 hours per YouTube video, which seems like a phenomenally efficient, and you seem like a machine, man. If you can make a video like that in 4 hours with that much depth and information and like entertainment value, super impressive. What's your process at a high level for getting one of those videos out the door when you sit down, let's say on a Thursday to do one?
Yeah. So the only thing I do is the idea for the video and the script. I have an editor. I have a team in place that's going to publish it, polish it, and all that kind of stuff. It's just me for the scripting. And if I could get rid of that too, I would. Also, I do the filming. It's got to be my face. But the scripting is you have a choice you make at the beginning of a YouTube channel. Do I go beginner stuff, or do I go advanced stuff? For me, I need to talk advanced. If I just always talked about beginner stuff, I could probably find a copywriter and I could probably train him like to work on retention, storytelling, all this YouTube stuff, etc. But I screwed myself. So I got to do this scripting part, and the way I do it is I make an outline, and the outline is like always the same. It's hook, proof that you should be listening to me, the introduction about what we're going to learn, a brief call to action, and then the actual content. And I'm dropping hooks. I'm dropping everything this whole way. I'm trying to shock people. I'm telling stories all this way. The other way you can do it is if you have a different type of personality, which I don't have, is you make that outline and then you don't write the script part. You just flow, because you can read the bullets and then you can say some stuff. It's just not me. I just don't have the ability to do that. But even if I pre-script it, it might take me half an hour to film it. But if I bullet pointed it, it's going to take me 3 hours to probably get it right. So it's kind of the same for me anyways.
Got it. That makes sense. So you have a template. Think that a lot of the stuff's in your brain. You'll do a little research, and then you'll read through the script. Really, just straight video shot. Hand it off to your editors, and they do all the creative, the B-roll, the cool little animations, the memes, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
got it. Awesome. Matt, I want to talk about. I know one thing you were looking to do is partner up with e-commerce brands. I mean, there's a lot of. If I had to say that one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue, for any e-commerce brand is just attention, eyeballs, traffic, right? Like no surprise there, but it's getting harder for a lot of people. You've got a tremendous amount of experience driving traffic. You know this industry as well as almost anybody. Talk a little bit about what you're looking to do at LeadSpring in terms of partnerships with other e-commerce brands.
Yeah. So LeadSpring is my portfolio company, meaning that we're like an SEO agency. We just do it only on stuff that we own. So traditionally, it's been mostly content websites, affiliate websites. We'll buy a website, build it up, flip it, and that's been our model for a long time. But on the side, we've always done JVs. So brick and mortar business wants to partner with us. We'll take over the marketing. If we hit some KPI metrics, we'll take equity stake in the business or some kind of profit share, or we're flexible on these deal structures. So we've worked with real estate agencies, law firms, and stuff like that. And we like it for multiple reasons. Number one is I think affiliate SEO is one of the hardest places to get results. It's super lucrative, but it's hard because it's like low barrier to entry. You don't have to buy any products. You don't have to build any business to set up. You don't have to even write the content. You can get writers to do it for you. So it's actually pretty challenging. And then we move over to a space where I thought it would be super hard, like law firm lead generation, because the lucrativeness of it. It's not. We cut our teeth on the hardest part, and then we're moving over here to what we thought was hard, but just doesn't compare. So we like that. We also like it because EAT, like having real authors, it's not an issue anymore. Like these are real law firms, these are real e-commerce stores and stuff like that. So I think the reason why business likes to partner with us is because there's an agency model that works. Agency is like a typical retainer. I'm going to pay this SEO agency $5,000 a month. They're going to give me sustained growth. I know it's sustained and not going to be too exponential because I'm giving them 5,000. They got to keep a certain percentage of them for themselves. They can only input so much without going into negative profitability themselves. For someone partners with us, because we're taking the expenses on our own, and our agencies or our company is built for exponential growth. Every time we work on a project, we're always going exponential. We will go in the red. We're shooting for vertical all the time in a safe manner. So it's like the people that partner with us will get to experience a partner that has skin in the game. And so it's for someone who wants to grow quickly, this is probably a huge win-win over the typical agency model. And so what's the situation with e-com? Like I said before, I think e-com's in a great position. I don't have any e-com partners in my portfolio, so I'm looking out for it right now.
Got it. You mentioned e-commerce brands and lawyers, legal. Anyone who's a particularly good fit for you that you'd be especially excited to partner with?
Yeah, they have to have a DTC website, right? So they're selling direct to consumer. It has to have a certain portion of SEO traffic and then a high traffic ceiling. We need to take you from here to 100x or something like that for it to be worth it for both of us. If you're already maxed out in the niche and we can only get you 5% gains, it's not interesting. So a lot of potential, and SEO is a majority traffic driver, I would say, and DTC.
Got it. That's great. The website LeadSpring, if people are interested in that and they want to get a hold of you, where's the best way to reach out, to connect and either talk more, see if it's a good fit and kind of understand how that partnership would look?
Yeah. Leadspring.org, LEADSPRING.org. And you can learn more about the model and the different types of deal structures we've done and see case studies and see our traffic graphs. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. It seems like one of the things too with affiliate that's so hard is I haven't done a lot of affiliate marketing. I've done a small amount, and you set it up you start getting some commissions. It feels fantastic. And then inevitably, like 6 months, 12 months, maybe if you're lucky, 18 months later, like you get a commission check and you're like, wait a minute, this is like half as big as it was before. And you reach out, you figure out like, and you don't see the email where like, oh yeah, sorry, our affiliate fees are going down. And I think it's probably just the human condition, but it seems, people get used to the traffic and then they cut the fees, or maybe they build out other traffic streams and get expensive. But maintaining that traffic, that same fee per conversion over a long time seems to be really difficult to do too.
Yeah. It can go like, I think it's just about leverage, like when you're working with affiliate partners that they have a like a affiliate marketing team, they're working with you, especially if it's something high ticket, you almost can guarantee argue for higher commissions every single time. When the entry level commission rate is usually the lowest. And then when you do a certain enough volume, they'll bump you up 2x or 3x. So these boutique agencies are great. Amazon associates can cut you in half and will not listen to you whatsoever. If you complain, they'll just kick you out. That's the difference.
Yeah. Leadspring.org. Check them out. If partnering up, getting a real, deeply experienced SEO on your side without out of pocket sounds interesting to you. Matt, I'd love to, before we wrap up here, I'd love to do a quick lightning round with some questions if you're game for it. So just fast 1 to 2 word or 1 to 2 sentence answers on these if you're up for putting a bow on the episode with this.
Let's do it.
Cool. What's one of the fondest memories you have from your childhood? I'm going to psychoanalyze you here.
Building forts in the living room.
Yes. I was going to say, this isn't my lightning round. I resonate with that one. How would you describe the SEO landscape in 1 to 3 words right now?
Lots of opportunity.
You live in Chiang Mai. If you weren't living there, where would you live?
Japan.
Who's your favorite OG SEO? You've got like Andy Jenkins, you've got like Rand Fishkin, you've got like Matt Cutts, you've got all these, all these people from back in the day. You got a favorite OG in the space?
Yeah, Terry Kyle. He used to he owns now WPX Hosting, but he was the first guy that I actually saw really looking at Google through data and running single variable testing. And I was just like, oh, that's how it's actually supposed to be done. Everything else was guessio. And then I found this guy and I was like, okay, this is how you actually learn.
That's awesome. Is he still around? Is he still doing stuff in the space?
I don't think he's SEO, but like WPX Hosting is one of the most like well-renowned hosting companies. I'm pretty sure he's happy with the switch.
Nice. Hardest part of your business?
Probably like just staying up on like Google updates and stuff like that.
How much money is enough? So you can either answer this in 1 or 2 ways. You can either say, I got X amount of liquid investment / cash in the bank or in a brokerage. So a fixed sum, or you can say, hey, if I had this annuity for life, maybe, it's $200,000, $50,000, $1 million per year coming in, that would be enough. Either way you want to slice it. How much is enough?
I actually calculated this recently. I did a burn rate calculation, and when I'm not out traveling and I'm just here in Chiang Mai, which is low cost of living, I only need $6,000 a month to manage the household, send my kid to school, and all that kind of stuff, which is actually kind of a lot for Chiang Mai. But I guess it would just be that. But would I feel comfortable just only having the income exactly what I'm spending? No. I definitely want some buffer.
Yeah. So what would be your number either on the cash flow month? I always push because usually it's kind of a squirmy question, but I have a commitment to push at least once just to get people to try to name a number.
I get that. I'm just embarrassed of my answer because I didn't start like feeling relaxed about my net worth until I hit 8 figures, which is way too much. You could have mentally resolved that within yourself way before that. And so I feel like I'm like an undeveloped consciousness because I didn't. And it took so much to make me feel comfortable.
Was that because you just wanted to prove to yourself, or did like you have something growing up where that ties into, or what do you think? Why do you think that is?
I think it goes back to some trauma. Not to darken this, and don't apologize or anything for leading me to this path. I'm fine talking about it. But I lost my parents when I was 20 and 22. right when I was at the peak of like student debt and everything else. So like, I think it changed something in me where I was like, oh crap, I need to learn how to survive. And like anything can happen where the financial situation you're in is just ripped out from under you. And maybe that spoke to a lot of how hard I worked and stuff like that, but I overshot it, and I probably carried around some guilt and some worry that I didn't need to have.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of our views on money, or even just life in general, are baked into our experiences. The new Morgan Housel book, I think it's what's it called? It's called Same as Ever. He talks about that. He's like, people aren't crazy. Like, no one is crazy. Everyone is rational when you live their life, right? Like, based on their experiences. Everyone is making decisions that make sense to them given what they've lived, the risks they've gone through, the hardships they've gone through. The reason it's not rational to you is because you have not lived their life. And I thought that was really interesting and made a sense. Never really thought about things that way. So,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah. How many hours a week do you work?
20 to 40, depending on what's going on.
Number one hobby, and you can't say work.
I used to be dance. I'd say now it's gaming, probably.
Nice. What kind of dance?
Popping. You know what popping is?
I have no idea what popping is. Never even heard of it.
It's under the umbrella of hip hop. It's like very niche down under hip hop.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite charity or cause in the world?
I seem to be a serial donator to Chiang Mai orphanages.
Nice. And then the last question, who's one of the most interesting people you've met through the last year in the SEO world?
That's a tough one. So recently, maybe 2 years ago, Kyle Roof, who's a figurehead in the SEO space, moved to Chiang Mai, and I've got the opportunity to know him pretty well, and he's become a close friend. If we could edit out anything we said about interesting, we don't need to tell him that. That's the last thing we need to tell him.
Just ballooning of the head / the way the way that men show affection. I love it. Matt, this is fantastic. Thank you, man. Appreciate you coming on, talking so much about SEO, affiliate, biohacking, life, thoughts, on money, everything. Wonderful having you on. And if you're listening again, leadspring.org is Matt's affiliate agency, where if you have an e-commerce brand or really any kind of brand where you're willing to partner up with someone with a deep experience in the space, without going out of pocket to drive meaningful traffic to your site, there's a guy to talk to. So leadspring.org. Anything else? Any parting words or thoughts before we wrap this up, sir?
That was a pleasure. But if you want to start a thread in your community to discuss any like loose ends from this conversation, totally happy to do that.
Cool. Thank you. We absolutely will. We're starting to do that with all the podcast episodes. We've done a bad job of that, but in 2024 here, need to, I actually had a discussion with my team today about doing exactly that. So nice. We'll 100% make that happen. So Matt, thank you so much. This was a blast and appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. Take care.